Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Innovation in Product podcast, where we explore product innovations and the people, processes, and tools behind them. I'm your host, Nolan Myers. I'm here with John.
Hello, good morning.
Hi. And today we're going to talk about the project retrospective and a way that you can use project retrospectives to really help understand what's going on in what went wrong in your projects and ways that you can find systemic issues that can be corrected. So John, let's start with just talking a little bit about the project retrospective that you like to use. Tell us a little bit about what it is and where it came from.
Yeah, so basically the project retrospective is a way to get deep insight that's cross-functionally balanced over the entire lifespan or life cycle of a product, at least, or rather focusing often on discovery through launch and go to market. The reason that we decided to create a special method here is that in my work with clients, we found that interviews were very subjective and looking at metrics were very dry, objective. Both are useful, but don't give you much detailed insight that's actionable. And so with the client, we created a project retrospective technique that involves a series of tools using the cross-functional team to go through the actual timeline of what happened, asking for the big events that impacted the project, and then going into root cause, and then finally creating a cross-functional summary of the insights. So it's both qualitative and quantitative, involves a cross-functional team, so it's more representative of what really happened. And it's tied to data. And by the fact that the team's spending quality time really reviewing the project and discovering it leads to greater insights than either interviews or metrics analysis alone could produce.
That's great. And I've been impressed. I've been through this particular process with you many times. And of course, I've done, probably hundreds of retrospectives in the course of my career. But one of the things that I found interesting about this methodology, as opposed to some of the ones that I've seen previously, is that this really leads to a few number of highly actionable insights. And I've seen so many retrospectives where there's a laundry list of 100 different things that went wrong in a project and just as many corrective actions, right? It's like, oh, well, there's 100 things we could do better. And the truth is, listing 100 things that you can do better is just about as valuable as listing none. Because if you don't have, because really people can only take action on one or two things at a time. And so one of the things that I've found really valuable about this methodology is its ability to focus the team and the change management team that's going to follow on a very few number of high value items.
Yeah.
So I know this came from a history of sort of like this KJ methodology that you've shared with me. Tell me a little bit about the history of this and how you derived it.
Yes, well, the true architect of this process is Dr. Alan Graham, who we worked with to develop this methodology. And Alan, what he did is he has deep understanding of both qualitative and quantitative tools for getting deep insight in product. And what he created is actually a series of activities that build on each other, starting with the project timeline, then going to using techniques like dot voting to prioritize those into the vital few, and then using root cause analysis to figure out why that happened. So these retrospectives are not blame oriented. They're not people punishment oriented, but rather just really trying to get to root cause. Could be turnover, could be any number of factors that led to this project being challenged. And so the genesis and then the summary of the findings is created with the KJ diagram. It's also called an affinity diagram or affinity analysis. And it's a way of creating word clouds around the most important root causes So if you do this affinity diagram across multiple projects, then you can begin to see trends in systemic behaviors that impact a range of projects, and therefore it gives you greater deeper insight. And what Alan did in synthesizing this suite of tools laid together in three pieces, the history walkthrough, the root cause analysis, and then the summary KJ affinity analysis, is you have a holistic and complete end-to-end understanding of the challenges and what caused them.
Thanks. Let's actually show a little bit about what that looks like. So I think in this episode, we're going to talk about the first two pieces of that puzzle that you just mentioned, where we'll talk about how do you get to the history, the set of events, and how do you then get to the root causes and prioritize around them. And that's bringing up for me that we should do a separate episode just specifically on the synthesis, because that was a whole process in and of itself that I think is also valuable and of course completes the loop on this. So as a quick overview here, there's this process is in 3 steps. The first of which is that we'll go through and look at the events that took place. And we're looking for a few number of events here, not all of them, but we're looking for the events that are going to be the most valuable for doing a root cause around. And then the second thing that we're going to look at is the process that we use for the root cause analysis, which is based on a fishbone diagram. So let me switch over to that. So this is a schematic overview here, but we've actually prepared a template that we can talk through about how that might actually work in practice. So here's a template, and we'll make this available on our website. And the template starts with this just high-level overview of a timeline of events so that you can see what took place in the project. So John, give me an example here. Talk me through, at the top, we've put the timeline here. We have the year and the month. And we've put it together a few milestones. So maybe flesh out for me, like what do you look for when you're thinking about the milestones of a project, and what kinds of events might you include here?
Yeah, good question. So I think one of the things, and we'll just take it back a little bit to selecting the projects to analyze. You want to analyze projects that have been recently completed or nearly completed. It is a retrospective. And also you want to analyze projects that are material and representative of those you imagine in the future. But once those two criteria are met, there is a little preparation, and the preparation is the product manager or the project manager or the scrum master, someone involved with leadership of the project, first creates their own timeline using their own notes, histories, documents, approvals, and so forth. And as you mentioned, there are relatively few events, maybe between 5 and 15 for a typical 18-month project. And then what you do is you have those basic bones laid out, and those were the M1, M2, those various milestones that were set in place. So there could be non-review milestones or non-commit milestones. And then the team supplements those with other milestones. And I think the events that really are important that we want to single out are to address the theme. And the theme is very important because the theme sets the stage for the retrospective. Is the retrospective about speed? Is it about efficiency? Is it about innovation? Is it about defects? So what are you trying to get to? And then with that in mind, you have the product managers leading the preparation, create just a handful of events, and they bring that to the team, partially fleshed out, and then they have the team flesh it out together. And you'll be amazed at how many things the product manager missed in the project history that were really important.
Yeah. So let's look at that together. What typically would happen here is the milestones. The way I've used this is to actually focus on typically there are key steps along the way that might have management approval, for instance. So this might be when you got the very initial go-ahead with a project charter. M2 here might be the beginning of the design phase where you say, okay, we're going to actually build it out into a design. M3 is a design phase. This might be, design or manufacturing or things like that. Every organization will have different milestones here. What I've done is I've actually fleshed this out. And this is an example here where the events that were planned align with these milestones, and those were actually done by the project manager and typically say something about what took place in that project that was expected to take place. And then the pink are the ones that were unplanned. And this is a lot of the pre-work that a project manager would put in, okay? And so the project manager might have done this. This is maybe even a little too detailed for a project manager. This is 15 items. You probably want to get to like 5 or 7 with the project manager. And then during the course of a session, you'll go in and actually, I probably should have had these coded, a few of these coded in black to indicate that the ones that are in black are the ones that the team added that the project manager had not thought to include in their summary of the thing. So the first meeting is really about bringing these kinds of events out. And then you mentioned dot voting earlier, and so I wanted to illustrate what that would look like. So imagine here we have these events that have all been populated. What we do is we give them a number so that people can talk about them very easily. Typically, I like to actually use the row number of the Excel spreadsheet. I'll change that in a future version. And then let's say we come in and vote. So John, give me 3 votes for the 3 most important, give me the numbers of the 3 most important events that you would have voted for based on what went wrong in this project.
Yeah, it's 3, 8, and 9.
3, 8, and 9, okay? And then let's say that I come in and I also vote for 3, I also vote for 9, and I vote for 10, okay? And then LB comes in, they also think that number 3 is the most important, number 6, and then maybe number 10 as well. JS comes in, also votes for 3, also votes for 8, and also votes for 9. And so what you're seeing here is as the votes come in, you're starting to see what is the one that gets the highest number of votes, what gets the second place number of votes, and what get the third, as an example of a tie there.
Nolan, one thing to mention I think is really important is the voting is blind. So you don't want the team members to influence each other. So as we do these normally, we ask the people to keep them to themselves. And I think that's really important because you don't want to bias it.
Yeah, really important. So what we've typically done is we've asked people to write down their votes before we tally. In the interest of time, we've not made them blind and that other people can't know what the votes are. It doesn't need to be anonymous, but it's blind when you cast the vote so that you don't change your votes. And that's a really important point. So at the end of this process, imagine that you have a complete set of votes here. In this example that I've fleshed out here, number 7 got the highest number of votes, and number 9 got the second highest, and 12 and 2 tied for the third highest. So we're going to select 3 of those. We'll choose 7, 9, and 12 to go into a root cause analysis process. So John, talk us through this. What is a fishbone diagram? Because I've created an example here that sort of builds on that. But just to sort of introduce this, what I've done is I've taken those 3 events, the nulla facili duis acumensan. Sorry, my Latin here is not up to par. And the suspendis sed odio. I've brought those 3 events into this RCA here. So you can see those here in column B. Those 3 events have been placed. And now let's, here's an example of what we do in the next step on this process. So John, introduce this fishbone diagram for us. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. We discussed that these meetings and retrospectives are uniquely blame-free. And so what we do is we use this technique. It's also called an Ishikawa diagram or a cause and effect diagram or a root cause diagram or a fishbone, is we use it. It's a group technique for getting at why did something happen? Not, we know what happened. Now the question for the team is why. And often when you think about a generic kind of business process, you might think about, well, machine, i.e. automation, you might think about process, you might think about, I don't know, people, you might think about tooling or preparation or some other aspect.
And
But
that
the
reminded me,
idea
John,
is,
we actually have these categories up here at the up.
oh, okay, great.
Yeah, so this sort of illustrates exactly what you're talking about, where we have these multiple categories of exploration as to why something may have happened.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the loose technique is to not put the labels at the end of the bone, such as management slash team communications, but you can start that way and pre-populate it. I like to just get the discussion going and say, here's event number one. What do we think was the cause of that? And then you play off each other to figure out, well, what was the cause? And then after you've probed that for a while, then you're looking for, well, what caused that? The notion is if you ask why 5 times figuratively, you'll get to the true root cause. So the second round is taking each one of the major bones. Let's say you have 3 to 5 major bones. You'd pick off a bone and say, now, why did this thing that happened that caused this results? And so what you can do is do a more detailed brainstorming, and eventually, whether it's 3 levels or 2 or 5, you get to the root causes shown there. And that's really the heart of the matter, is the level 3.
Yeah, and this is great. So we put a little fishbone diagram up here as a mnemonic, and the idea is that the event is here, and you're exploring different branching paths off of that event as to what led to it. So here is an example of one root cause with 2 other root causes branching off, and of the second level, a third level of root cause coming from that. And so this sheet is just a way of laying that out onto a sheet that you can make as a collaborative asynchronous or a collaborative all remote event where people are looking at the same spreadsheet rather than being on the same whiteboard. And this level 1 causation means that there's only one event branching off of the main cause, but that one event has 3 subcategories of events here that are that sort of led to it. And this subcategory here has 1/3 level proximate cause that came to it. And then the final step in this process is actually to go through the voting. And this is a very similar kind of thing. Again, we ask people to remember their vote ahead of time. And this template allows you to come in and start categorizing those votes. So if you come in and start tallying, right, you write down, you capture the top 3 votes for each person, and maybe it's 4, who knows, but you tally those up after people have written them down, and this template will give you the total number of votes there so that you can then take those and bring them into the last step, which is the synthesis. And so that last step we'll actually cover in another episode, but this gives you the sort of the complete project history. And I should say we do this typically. This originally was designed around a 1-day, all-day workshop. We've broken this now into 3 distinct 1.5-hour sessions. So it's actually in total less time that's being dedicated, and it's less intrusive than the original method, because it's something that can be done, you know, while other things are still going on. You don't have to give up a whole day, but you're bringing together the team for 3 90-minute sessions to bring this together. So, and we have information on the website about sort of what we include in each of those meetings, but this should give you a talk through of the overall approach and how we use that retrospective to hone in on really the 3 root causes that were the most impactful for that project. John, any closing thoughts you'd like to add to this?
None other than we've used this literally hundreds of times with dozens and dozens of clients. And we found it is, of all the things we do in project analysis, the most insightful, the most shareable, and the most leverageable part of our analysis work. So we found it very helpful.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much. Thanks for tuning in. That concludes episode 2 of our Innovation in Product podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.
Bye.